It will be a fight.
And there'll be a lot of death, unfortunately.
It will be a fight we will win.
But a lot less death. But there will be death.
People should be actually kept out of the country for at least 28 days.
America is not prepared.
Cindy Watson's here, and we've just discussed that we're not allowed to talk about the particular thing that's happening across the world right now for the first 5 minutes. Otherwise, this will definitely get demonetized. So don't.
I'm not going to say anything. I got the message.
How is America? What's happening over there at the moment? It's obviously it's a dramatic a change in comparison to Australia. You were here. You were born here, weren't you?
Yeah. I think people have this perception that I am a American that lived in Australia and then moved back to America, when in reality I am an Australian born and raised in Australia, adopted a ridiculous accent because of my mom and, being around that accent all the time, and then moved to America because, as you do, sometimes you're like, I just need to get out of my home country and do other things. So here I am.
What is it like there now? Are people worried? Are people concerned? Or is it more of I've talked about this before. It was such a massive media beat up with this particular subject that we can't name, that it seems like people everywhere were terrified, and yet we don't really get the honest view of the millions of people who live in the States. I mean, we just hear, one or two people's opinion. What is it like? Let me use this as like you're a war reporter. What is it like on the ground?
You know what? I live in DC, which is I feel like one of the last states to go into lockdown, and will be probably one of the last states to come out of lockdown because of our proximity to New York, which was like the epicenter of all of this. Honestly, my life hasn't changed too much. I'll say that first and foremost, because I am, as most of this shocks people, but I am super introverted. So I like being at home. I've seen the same friends that I would see usually, but I think that the majority of America, because the cases of the thing we aren't allowed to talk about have been so low around
Who knows
the
what
rest
that is?
a lot of people I don't think are freaking out. I think most people, like in Wisconsin, for example, I believe they opened up restaurants, and within like an hour of doing so, they were just packed again because people are over it. I mean, that's just what I've sort of been hearing and experiencing through the people that I know. But again, I mean, that's just my friends and my relationships. So I could be wrong. I mean, ask someone in New York, see what they have to say.
I learned yesterday that there was a pandemic. Fuck, I said it. I learned yesterday that there was a real bad sore throat getting around during Woodstock, and they had the festival. I think it might have been H1N1 or H3 someone, or I don't know, H3 something. It was something.
Another series of
another
numbers
sore throat.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that was getting around during Woodstock, but life went on as usual. And I mean, people see the numbers of cases of dirt naps, I'll call them, rather than the other word, in America. And the big issue is people don't correlate the numbers or the percentage of people that live there. Population growth, population size, population density. Now, that is an issue here in Australia, because you hear these big numbers. Oh my God, X amount of people had a dirt nap today in America, and only one in Australia. But there is, I think America's 10 times the size population wise.
Bigger than that. America, I think, is somewhere in the realm of like 14 times the population size of Australia. And if you think about it, Australia has the same landmass, almost the same landmass as mainland United States. People always conveniently forget these things when they're doing, like country to country comparisons. Unless you're bringing it down to per capita, the numbers mean nothing, in my opinion, as an expert on all this sort of stuff. But
us as YouTubers are experts at the moment, because we're the only one giving reliable information, allegedly.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I don't know if you heard this, but apparently the cases in Sweden and the dirt naps? The amount of dirt naps in Sweden, it has actually eclipsed the United States.
Really?
Don't quote me on that. I mean, people can fact check me on that. But that's what I believe I was reading today. And I thought, well, why is America getting the majority of the attention? Why are we not looking at these other countries?
Well, Miss Watson, I can tell you why. Is because this really bad sore throat that's getting around at the moment is Donald Trump's fault.
Yeah, no, didn't you know that?
I thought
Everything is Trump's
everything's
fault.
Donald Trump's fault. I saw one of his media, or the media lady, I believe is the technical term that they have here over there in America, addressing a group of the media, and they hit them with a question about, will you retract your quote about the particular sore throat virus that's getting around at the moment being not being an issue, not being something to worry about. And she hit back with, is the Huffington Post going to withdraw their comment about that? Is this newspaper, is this media agency? I think it's just this weird situation right now where everything is on Trump's shoulders. And I mean, I know everyone tries to get this, get whatever edge they can have on Trump. And I get that, because a lot of people don't like Trump. A lot of people don't listen to anything that Trump says. They just don't like him, and whatever. That's people's prerogative. We have that in Australia too. There's some people that hate Scott Morrison, hate whoever the other bloke is. Anthony Albanese, I think, is the current shadow minister. I mean, who gives a shit? No one gives a fuck about Australian politics. It's the most boring game in the land.
No. It's very influential. It definitely impacts the rest of the world. Didn't you know
absolute garbage. As if anyone would care if Scott Morrison turned up. Scott Morrison is cleaning the boots of Vladimir Putin. No one cares about you, Scott. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Who gives a shit? But my point is that they go so hard after Trump, and it's just like, I like Trump. I like him as a person. I barely know any of his policies, but I like him as a person because he's such he treats the media and he treats these people who are around him all the time with the respect that they deserve. And I think that is such a beautiful thing to see in politics, in that political game, that political landscape that we just don't see here. You can be anyone from any newspaper, any media group, any TV station here in Australia, and ask an absolute cockhead of a question to the Australian Prime Minister, and he's got to sit there, smile and deliver it. And yet Trump will just come back and say, fuck you. And I love that. I love him for that.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel the same way. I mean, I went on a date. And not
a
that.
What? A super sore throat date.
I stopped myself. Hey, I got that.
Yeah.
I went on a sore throat date, for like a walk around the block the other day with a nice human being. Totally not breaking the whole stay-at-home measures or anything like that. Bad Sydney slap on the wrist. And he turned to me by the end of it and he said, "How can you support the president?" And I was like, well, it's actually fine if you don't support him. This is not a cult. You are in fact allowed to think how you want. You're allowed to have whatever value system you want. That's okay. And I freely admit that he's done some things that I just sit there and I watch and I think, okay. I mean, no one's infallible. I certainly don't think he's infallible by any stretch of the imagination. But just like you said, I love the fact that he puts the media in their place. I love the fact that he puts the other corrupt politicians in their place. I just love it. I just love watching him behave like a normal, everyday person. And I know that's what turns a lot of people off about him. And that's, again, it's fine. You don't have to like him. But I appreciate the fact that he's a businessman who's running the United States in the way I think it should be run. So, putting freedom as the main, priority. And then obviously just trying to make the economy as efficient as possible and things like that. That's what matters to me as a half-blood American.
Yeah.
Australian, with Australian.
I had Dave Rubin on the show a couple of weeks ago because I'm a big name dropper, and he had dinner with Trump, and he just said, mate, the dude is just a normal everyday guy who's just cracking jokes. And, he has to be a piece of shit in a lot of ways because he's worked his way to the top. And to be at the top in business, you cannot be a nice person. That's just the way it is. And I mean, as you said, he's not infallible. And is that the right word? Infallible?
Infallible.
You're always the one who picks up all of my grammar. Every time I put a video up and there's a spelling mistake in it, Sydney's onto me in like 30 seconds. She's like, "You've done this wrong. That's not grammatically correct." It's like, yeah, we get it. You got a degree. Get over yourself.
I have 2 degrees. Thank you very much.
I see.
You always put like apostrophes in the wrong spot, and then I'm there. I meet it. You're so right. As soon as you do it, I'm like, Isaac, this is not correct. I don't think people realize that you and I are friends, like behind the scenes. So people will be like, "Do you know who Isaac is? You two should definitely collab." And I'm like, yeah.
But we've done videos together.
I know.
We did one.
When I'm done correcting his, spelling mistakes, I'm sure we'll find some time.
I know, Sydney. She's my editor. But I can't spell, and I get the shits with people when they carry on about like like, your or your, that type of
Right.
stuff. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. So I don't even try with spelling anymore. I send emails to anyone. I'm just like, yeah, fucking whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. If you can understand it slightly, then you know what I'm trying to say. So get over
Yeah.
it.
We get it. That's okay. You don't need to know all the grammar in the world. It's okay. We get it. But infallible. Yeah. That's
Inflatable, whatever I was saying. Trump, I think treating him like he is a pariah, like he is a lord, like he's a god, it's such a negative thing. Like, you just can't do that. And people are doing that right now with the man that Trump's going against in the election that may never happen, Joe Biden. He's had all these claims about sexual assault and all this type of stuff. I'm sure you're very across the subject. And people are still like, no, even though that this is all happening and the people are out there saying this, much like they did with Trump in 2016, they are just ignoring it. They're just going, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to vote for him. Isn't that an insane idea?
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. In fact, like look, I've always been, for the people who don't know, for the people who are listening who have no idea about American politics and who don't care, which is totally fair enough if you're not from here, or even if you are from here, like, I get it.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party because the election's in November against Trump. And basically the long and short of it is that he has been accused by 8 different women of some varying degree of sexual harassment and now most recently of sexual assault. The way that the left, or, like the Democrats more specifically, have been reacting to it is basically to say, yeah, well, we support women and we still like Me Too. Me Too's pretty good, but just kidding, we're still going to vote for Biden regardless. So they basically abandoned their entire value system surrounding the whole Me Too movement and Believe Women, which came up back in 2018, which again, I don't want to go through the entire litany of what was happening with all of that. But that's sort of the general principle. It's just insane.
It is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And so are these claims on Biden, are they substantiated? Have they been backed up? I mean, because I know when Trump was going through a lot of these, a lot of them were just coming out and there was one after the other, and maybe some of them weren't as reliable as the others.
Right. Yeah.
Have they backing these people? Are these people coming out? Are they taking Biden, are they proceeding with legal action? What's going on there?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure if anyone's actually tried to do anything in a legal sense. So we're not sort of going down the same road as the whole Kavanaugh hearings. Again, for people who need context, the Supreme Justice that Trump basically put forward to the Supreme Court was accused of sexual harassment some 30 odd years ago. That went through this whole like proceedings to basically determine whether or not the woman who was accusing him is telling the truth, yada, 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 without actually going to official court.
Yes.
So no, like, you know what? I don't think anyone's actually done anything in like a serious, actually, no, that's a lie. I totally lie. DC police have closed the case of sexual assault against Biden.
Okay.
So they've closed it. So I guess the woman who was accusing him started legal proceedings or attempted to start legal proceedings. But, there's all this video and, photo evidence of Biden basically sniffing women or, touching girls.
There's so much.
Right.
It is ridiculous. I think over this next part of the conversation, we'll play some of it and put some photos up.
Yeah, this is the time. This is the montage now of girls being uncomfortable.
And it's disgusting. Yeah. Like some of the things, he's always sniffing hair and like checking out what are you using Pantene, what's happening with your hair. He's just a fucking bit of a creep.
Yeah, no, but it's funny though, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's an editor of a publication. They've run a lot of stories at the moment about Biden and what's been going on and whatnot. And he basically asked me, he said, do you think that Biden's doing this deliberately? And I was like, and I hate to say this, like, I don't know necessarily if he's doing it to be deliberately creepy. That's the thing, is I don't know where he's placing, does that make sense? Like, yeah. I'm not sure if this is, coming from that really gross, disgusting place. Although watching it, I'm appalled. And women have come forward and said, this made me uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I don't know why you're touching me. There was one interview. Oh my God, Isaac, if you watch it, you'll die. There was one interview that a woman gave, I believe, to CNN, where she said that back in 2016, I believe it was, or 2014, one of the years, Biden came up to her, put his hands on her shoulders and like kissed the back of her head. And even listening to her say it, I was uncomfortable hearing it. So I'm not justifying the behavior. I'm just wondering if it's actually coming from that really gross, creepy place. That's what I want to know. Like, he like, you've got to be brave to do that on camera. Like, let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, does he do that because he feels untouchable, because he is a part of the left? Does he do it because he's, I don't know. It's a really weird thing.
I know. That's what's so strange about it.
Or maybe it's because he's just so old, he doesn't really comprehend what's happening. Now, his whole mindset, I mean, and probably old's the wrong word, but so senile.
Pretty old.
He's pretty old. How old is he?
Yeah. I don't know. I can Google it if you want.
Yeah,
guessing in the realm of
I'm going to Google it right now. All right. I'm going to say 72. Joe?
Yeah, I would say around that. Maybe between 70 to 75.
He is 77.
Oh God, I didn't realize he was that old. Oh, that's right, because that's the joke, is that Trump is the youngest person running.
I mean, Bernie Sanders was 78. Well, not was, he still is. And Trump's 73. It's a weird thing that they give the toughest job in the world to these very old people.
I know, right? That's what I look at the Congress. I look at Congress here in the US and I just think, why are all, like, I mean, again, I don't have anything against old men or anything like that. They have a wealth of experience, you know. Hopefully, you would hope that they've run businesses and things, so they have a general understanding of how society works and how business works and economics works and whatnot. But I just go, where are all the young people?
Yeah,
like,
and especially if you've been in politics for your entire life. Like, what do you, he became the 6th youngest senator in US history at the age of 30. So he's been involved in politics. I don't know what else he got up to, but for 47 years.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I know.
Half a century. But
it's weird. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's weird too, because he's prided himself on basically being like a champion of women. So back in 1994, you know, he put forward this, you know how you said before, Sydney, you're probably all over this? I am all over this.
Good. Deets. Give me deets.
Stuff is to anyone. That's the only thing. It's like, you know, how often, you know, how many times can you say that a politician's a suck bag? Like, how many times can you repeat it before it's boring, you know? But this guy who, you know, is now being accused of all these awful things and, you know, has been filmed doing some pretty creepy stuff, you know, is someone who likes to think of himself as this champion of, you know, female rights. So it's just like, what? But he's passed specific legislation for it, yada, yada, yada.
But that's always, as we said before, skeletons in the closet. Like, you find so many, and it's the same with male feminists. And I get a lot of heat from like feminist people's, not that I associate with, but in comment sections and shit about talking about male feminists. And I always say the same thing. Like, if you are genuinely consider yourself a male feminist, then you are trying to get sexual brownie points from standing up for whatever you think is going to help you get laid. And it is gross. It is so gross. One of the things I always try and push on this channel is there's nothing wrong with being masculine or being manly as long as you're not an asshole. Yep. That's the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're totally right. I don't know how we sort of came to this point where we made being a dick synonymous with being a man. I just, like, I know just as many women that are, you know, butt heads and that are not nice people, and just as many men that are awesome, wonderful people. I don't know when this happened or why it came about, but here we are. And it's funny that you bring up male feminists, because I tweeted the other day that I don't know what it is, but and the reason what prompted it was I was on Twitter, you know, doing my usual being mean to people on the internet thing, because Twitter is an adult playpen, and I'm sure you know that. I read your mean tweets.
Oh, I'm a horrible piece of shit. I love it. But the thing is, I send those tweets when I'm watching Downton Abbey on Netflix. Like, it's just like, I'm just being heaps like, oh yes, I wonder what they're up to today on Downton Abbey, and then I'm just being an asshole.
So good. I saw this dude's profile, and he wrote in his bio, feminist, and I looked at it and I was like, ugh, like, I just had this response. So I was just like, yuck.
It's icky. That's what it is. It's icky.
So I tweeted it, and I was like, I don't know why. Like, it's inexplicable to me. But I find when men identify as a feminist, or even call themselves a male feminist, which are you why do you get an extra name in there? Are you just a feminist? Just be a feminist. It just creeps me out. I don't know why. I just feel icky. I'm like, yuck, I don't want this. It's far away from possible things.
It's the same as reading when I can't remember who I was looking at, but it was a politician here in Australia, and their name, let's just say their name's Daniel or something. And then at the end of their name in their Twitter header, it said he, him.
Oh,
and
yeah.
But it's like, well, we know. Like, you don't need to say it. Like, I understand using pronouns if it's like borderline. If you genuinely believe, and I'm cool with this, if you genuinely believe that you are gender neutral and you want to be this, if you want to put your pronouns in there, good on you, champion. I don't give a fuck. But if you are obvious, it's like me. Imagine this big head in a Twitter thingo and saying, Isaac Butterfield, he, him. No shit, dickhead. We know you got a cock. No one cares. It's ridiculous.
What about the ones that are like Z and Zer?
You can't make up words. That is just horrid. You cannot make up words. It's, when the people who try to make up words, like Z and Zer and Zer, they are the people who try to force their own nicknames in primary school. They're like, call me Big Dog. No one wants to call you Big Dog, you little freak. That's what they want to call you.
You're actually right. That's a really, really good comparison. They're like, here's my special name that no one else decided for me, that I've decided for myself and agreed upon with myself. You will refer to me as such. It's like when, you're 100% right. I think the thing that makes me laugh about all of that is the fact that while you do have made up terms that literally no one is ever going to use except within your little circle of fringe people that, this is what you do. You just sort of like with each other. That makes me laugh on one hand. And again, like if I met someone like that, I think the majority of people would just try to be respectful of them because like we're not nasty people. But I'm not going to call you your random made up term. I'll just probably avoid calling you anything, honestly. Yeah. But what makes me laugh the most is when you read those articles about like Sam Smith or some of these other actors and actresses or singers or whoever who identify as they, and reading how absurd the language in these articles are because they're trying so hard to avoid using the term him or her or whatever, that they full on, it just makes no sense. It's nonsense. It's reading nonsense. They, although we do use it in the singular form to refer to, someone when their sex is undisclosed, that's not because that's a brand new gender term or it's not a brand new sex. It's just that's just how language is on the odd occasion. But they is plural. It's confusing.
Imagine you reading these fucking articles. You'd be freaking out. You'd be like, oh my God, I better tell Isaac they're grammatically incorrect.
Seriously, I think about you the whole time. I'm like, this must be how Isaac feels all day, every day. Is this his everyday life? What is this? I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
No, you can't make up language. It's ridiculous. Like words are there already. Unless you're making up a product and calling it whatever you want, then you can make up a word. But you can't just make up what you call people. It's giving control. And that's all it is. It's just having control over a small section of your life. And if you're someone who feels like their entire life has been a lie or they've been unable to really grasp reality, and then if you're able to tell people, this is what I am, I'm a Zer, and then they call you a Zer, it gives you a little bit of power, a little bit of kick. And I'm happy if someone goes, oh, can you call me she or he? I would, as most people, including the person who really made this quite a topical piece of conversation, Jordan Peterson, as he said, if you want to be called she, I'll call you she. Whatever. It's all good. But when it becomes, and I mean, that was the problem in Canada. It became part of the human rights violation, et cetera, et cetera. People being made to call people certain things with the rule of law, that's not an issue I'm worrying about here in Australia, but it's becoming a social issue. If you don't call them what they need to be, then you are cast out into the distant wilderness because you're a bad person. And I think that's a similar thing. It's a slippery slope, give them an inch, they'll take a mile. removing gender off birth certificates. I mean, I was having a look through some of the videos that you've posted over the last, year or so, and we cover a lot of the same subjects. And I'll thank you to stop stealing my content. But the thing is, like, we are both agreeing on the same thing, and it's good to know that you look at the views and you look at the people on both sides of our channels. That there are people who, like the silent majority of people, completely agree with the contrary of what people are reporting.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, the fact of the matter is you get these ideas that sort of start in academia or, in what I like to call like flim-flam land, where it makes no sense and no one actually cares. And then they start getting more and more and more traction. And then eventually they seep and just permeate through, every layer of society and then become commonplace. I don't know if you saw, but some people, the other week, I think it was about a week or 2 weeks ago, started talking about the term cisgender, which is CIS for people who don't know. Cis is what they call people like you and me who identify with the sex that we are given sex at birth. So I was, born a girl, I'm a girl, and you were born a male, you're a male. Well, I was born, female, I'm a female. So I personally hate the term. I just find it, monstrously offensive. And it's really interesting because, again, on the Twitter sphere, a couple of us were tweeting about how and why we find it offensive, like that these people have just introduced a new gender term to us. And it was really interesting to me to see how many people agreed with that, but also how many people are like, what is this? And I was like, you're right. What is this? It's born out of academia, been picked up by the media, and now it's part of wider society. Why is it part of wider society? It's a nothing term. And that's what happens a lot of the time. So we end up with this just ridiculous, I don't even know what to call it, this just ridiculous tidal wave of nonsense that's coming from university classrooms. And then you and I on the other side of it have to put up with it all the time.
So
I sound very creative, don't I? I sound like a grumpy old man.
Yeah, good. That's what this channel is all about. It's just ranting about everything. Why do you find it offensive?
Again, and I dare say we're the same in this regard, because I know that you're pretty moderate, whereas I'm somewhere on the right.
No, I'm far right, according to everyone on the internet. I'm severely far right.
Oh Lord, yeah, you're the furthest right. I've never met someone as right wing as you are.
I know, right? Even Hitler looks at me and goes, "Oh, calm down, mate."
Oh my God.
What?
I ain't touching that one. No,
you don't have to. I forget you have a real job. Sorry.
But the reason I find it offensive is because, again, I dare say we're the same in this regard. I don't care actually what you identify as, whether you're a woman who's transitioning to a man or vice versa. I will not go out of my way, but I will definitely respect you if you ask me to, refer to you as whatever, because I'm not a dick, and I don't really, it gives me nothing to be mean to you. It doesn't enhance my life. And if anything, me just, being a normal human being towards you is probably what's going to make society a lot more functional. So on that front, I try to be respectful, whatever. When it comes to having people force terms and identities onto me that I didn't ask for, that's when it starts to become offensive. Cisgender is, like, for starters, it's a nothing term, like I said before, but it's forcing a gender identity onto me I didn't ask for. Like,
yes. So if I can interrupt, that is exactly the argument that someone who doesn't believe they are male or female would use. They would say, you are forcing this gender onto me.
But that's why I'm saying, that's why I prefaced it by saying, if you want to change and, transition to the other gender, I'll call you that. But yeah. I'm saying that, like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, in the sense that I think there's this whole portion of people out there that are like, I don't want to be forced into a box of what my sex is. And again, if I can't even imagine how uncomfortable it must feel to have gender dysphoria and to feel like that must suck. I empathize with people. But then it's really interesting because I'm like, well, why are we taking the majority, the 99.7% of the population, and giving them a special term? It's not like you call people, so, say someone has schizophrenia. You say that person has schizophrenia, they have a mental illness. You don't say the majority of people don't have mental illnesses. You don't come up with a new term for it in order to differentiate the 99% from the whatever percent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. If you've got two eyes and a couple of people have got one eye, you don't call us two eyes. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate, trying to sort of think of the other side of the argument. But pushing this coming up with a term and saying,
Mm-hmm.
you, 99% of the world, are this, and
Mm-hmm.
a few people on the fringe are something else. I think it's a label that doesn't need to be there.
Exactly. It's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. It's a step, and it's sort of like it's almost like a hurdle that people have to get over. It's like it's a step and a hurdle that doesn't need to be there, and it's abrasive. It's like you see it and you hear it and you're like, okay, sis, whatever. What the fuck does that even mean? But yeah, it's one of these things where I find myself, particularly on Twitter and things like that, I always follow people who I know will give me ideas for content. So I follow the Clementine Fords in the world. I follow the Pedestrian magazine. I follow all those type of people because I know the things that they say are hilarious and it will help me with content. And these are the people who are, I can't remember the name of the magazine. It might have been Pedestrian or Junkie or something like that. And it's not a magazine, it's a publication. And they said something the other day about cis men need to understand this. And I was just like, I'll send that link to myself and read that later because I'm sure I can find something in there that is amazing, an absolute gem. Now, you're a journalist. I assume you went to, well done. I assume you went to journalism school or university?
Yeah, I have a Master of Journalism.
Yep. Mm-hmm. What school did these people go to with those journalists? Is there a different school? Like the Huffington Post and BuzzFeed? What journalism school did they go? Is there a different one? Is there a special one?
No, they probably went to the same ones, you know. Well, I know that a lot of students that I went to school with ended up at the ABC.
Gross.
So yeah, wonderful. Love that. So, you know, I think we all end up in the same institutions and get spat out the other side with either, you know, our free thinking ideologies or our let me regurgitate what I'm being told to write. That's what I hated about being at university is the whole regurgitation of everything, you know. You just say what you're being told and it's just icky. Super icky. My God, I have some hilarious stories from those times. It's nuts. Hilarious.
What do you got?
Oh, well, once a tutor tried to fail a paper I wrote because I said that policing in some instances is necessary because it is, like, policing is necessary. You know, much as we like to have a polite society, unfortunately, there are some people who do not follow the rules of polite society. And I, for one, am thankful when police aren't acting tyrannical like they have been recently. I'm happy to have the police around, you know. Anyway, he wrote he wrote that my opinions were worrying and then proceeded to try to fail the paper. It got read by someone else and they ended up gave me a passing grade. So he tried to fail it, told me that my opinions were worrying. And then when I came to find out was that this tutor actually had participated in the Occupy Melbourne protests that I was writing about and saying that the police did the right thing in trying to move those people on from their protest. Because it just in, you know, contextually it made sense, the argument that I was making, and he had a personal, you know, stock in that. So he failed my paper. That's one story.
Isn't that crazy to think that they would go to, because the argument against police, and I know what you're saying with the tyrannical movement, I think it may have been New Zealand. I saw the other day that they've moved legislation into, you probably know a lot more about it than I do. I read the headlines. I don't have time. I got to watch Downton Abbey. I don't have time to bloody be reading big stories. Jeez.
Clementine Ford on Twitter. You've got a lot of things to do. You're busy. You're a busy boy.
She is now Voldemort, she who shall not be named. And yeah. Yeah, they look similar.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. No, he's a lot skinnier than she is.
Oh, fuck me. I didn't say that.
Sorry. I try not to take the low blows, but she brings out the worst in me, that woman. Sorry, Clem.
Who cares? Like, people say, oh, you should only punch up. I coward punch. I don't give a fuck. I'll throw punches wherever they need to go. As long as people laugh, who gives a shit? It's all comedy. Get over yourselves.
Yeah.
As far as the tyrannical side of things, I understand what you're saying. But with the necessity for police, this idea that we don't need to have someone above us who is in control. Now, for the longest time, you couldn't control people the way they do now. You had to use God. You have to say, don't rape and murder because God will smite you, almighty smiter. Now you have police to do that. But still, even people like Lisa Wilkinson on the project a couple of years ago when that young lady was murdered and raped in that Melbourne park, she was saying, listen, why do we blame women for this? I don't think anyone blames women, but she said we need to blame men. And the whole idea of this, we need to blame men and we shouldn't be worried about walking alone in parks. I mean, it is unfortunate, but that is the reality of the situation, that there has always been and there will always be crazy people who will do horrible things. Like, from my point of view, as a friend of yours, I wouldn't want you walking in a park at 12 o'clock at night in the middle of a city. Like, that would be, I'd be like, probably shouldn't do that. It's a bit dangerous. But the idea is, in the Australian media and the media around the world, they're pushing this idea that, hey, we should be able to do whatever we want. And if anything else happens, it's that other person's fault. And it is that other person's fault. But don't put yourself in the situation.
Right. Yep. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's obviously you as an autonomous person have the right and the ability to do whatever you feel like you want to do, whether that be walking through a park at midnight or, going for a swim in a dam and accidentally drowning. Like, these are your choices that you can make as an autonomous free citizen. But you're right. I mean, there is personal responsibility that goes along with that. So when you do go into that park at night, you do make the educated decision about doing it. Do you say, yeah, my house is only 500 meters away, I guess I'm going to take that chance? Or do you say, you know what? Hey, Larry, will you please walk me to my door? Or whatever, I'm going to get an Uber home, whatever the case may be. These things happen. They're super unfortunate. And it's awful that it happens. But society isn't what it used to be, some 50 odd years ago. I mean, things have evolved so much so that now we have such a larger population. We have a denser population, and people are different. People are different, believe it or not. Well, in my opinion, people are different.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't feel safe walking through the streets. I probably do now because no one's out, but I don't feel safe walking through the streets, and I'm, 6'8" and 115 kilos. I don't feel safe. Like, this isn't all the time, but if there is a chance that I will be robbed or mugged or attacked or whatever. So why would that be a situation that I may face, but you think that just because you shouldn't face it? It's a crazy idea. And then I'll use Lisa again as an example when she said we need to tell young boys not to rape. This whole hashtag all men is just so crazy. It is insane.
I feel bad for her boys, to be honest, and her husband. I mean, imagine actually going through life thinking that all men need to be taught not to rape. I just feel like it's such an insane viewpoint. It really is.
It's unnecessary. It isn't something that is real because, I know dudes that are creepy. I know a lot of people that are just like, you're just like, oh, fuck, I wouldn't trust you in a room with my sister or whatever. But but chances are they wouldn't, do anything horrible, but they're just creeps. They might sniff their hair or something like Joe Biden. But the problem is that there are mental people out there. And I'm not talking about people with mental illness. I'm talking about people who are just like, they are, something may have happened. I remember hearing a story recently about a dude, and I won't go into details, but a dude who, had a horrible experience with one of his parents, and then they found out that his father had a horrible, horrible experience in life, and it follows that lead. So there is violence, and that could be construed as toxic masculinity, or it could just be that's how humans interact with each other. Sometimes the stars align, and you get an absolute cockhead of a father or a cockhead of a mother, and then that molds you in a way. There are so many people with mother issues and father issues and all that type of shit that it is hard to pinpoint which gender is to blame. Maybe it is easier to just blame us as a species.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the thing is that people who do, I mean, you're right in the sense that people who have trauma in their past often end up becoming people who victimize others. Like that's like a statistical fact. Like lots of people who end up in prison have a history of, some sort of violence in their background, whether that be perpetrated by their mom and dad or something negative that happened to them. In fact, like a lot of men who turn out to be rapists, for example, have some sort of, victimization as children. And actually there's some really, really interesting stats out there about this where a lot of male rapists who exclusively target women have a history of female abuse. They've been abused by women in their childhood. So like there's a lot of like really interesting facts and information out there about these topics, but you're right, these people often have trauma and then they go out and then they enact that trauma on other people. So it's like it's really sad because then, and look, I'm not here defending anyone. I don't want that to be like a thing where like Sydney's okay with this, Sydney's not okay with this. I just think understanding why people do the things that they do is so paramount to being able to tackle these issues. And the funny thing about it is no one actually wants to do that. No one wants to tackle the root cause of the problem. They just want to sort of like chuck the band-aid over it and just pretend it's not happening. And that's why people like Lisa Wilkinson, for example, have this narrow-minded, one-dimensional view of things. And it's not helping. It's not helpful.
And that's the big thing. It doesn't help. You go out there and you virtue signal, this should be the case, and yet nothing changes.
Yeah.
You know,
you're right.
And then you say, oh, well, nothing, the next time it happens, oh, nothing changed. It's men's fault. Well, you've got this huge platform. Utilize it in a way that doesn't pit people against each other. It addresses the fact that there is so much undiagnosed mental illness in the world and untreated mental illness in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Use it to address the fact that some people have the ability to be the worst parents in the world. And it's like if you go to Bunnings and you buy a potted plant, right? If you buy that plant and you might feed it water and fertilizer and it grows into a big tree, or you feed it shit and you don't water it and it turns into nothing. It's the same with parents. You know, it depends how you mold something, how you help it grow. And it can grow into a happy, beautiful person, or it can grow into a psycho. It can. I mean, how many psychos are out there? You don't know what people are up to.
Psycho? What is that?
What do you mean?
Do plants go psycho too?
Have you never heard of the Venus flytrap? Oh, it's a tumultuous plant. It's very anti-vegan.
I like succulents, you know. They don't do a whole lot, but they're cute. They're very cute.
Yeah, that's
they're
like
crazy.
It's like Down syndrome kids. It's really what an asshole. I'm gonna write that down. That's fucking funny. Sydney, entertain the people while I write this down.
Oh my god. Isaac is not very good at spelling, and he does other weird things on the internet. Is that good? You're
doing well. Succulents.
I'll bring this back to policing because you got a bit far from it, and I think the point you were trying to make there is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were going to bring up how New Zealand has passed new legislation that basically gives police powers to go into your home without a warrant.
Yes.
Now, Aussies love you to pieces. I really do. You're my people. But a lot of Aussies are fine with this sort of thing, and they're like, "Well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, then what does it mean?"
It's crazy.
Home. And I'm like, you have the right to not be freaking, searched like a criminal. If you haven't committed a crime, the police should not be coming into your home. And especially because people don't realize, right? And this is what's got me about the whole the thing that shall not be named. This is what's killed me about all of this. And Americans get it to a much larger extent than Aussies, simply because America is founded on principles of freedom and liberty. Australia, not so much. I mean, like, we're like penal people, we're basically criminals, then some settlers. It's weird.
Yep.
So the thing that's killed me about all of this is that Americans obviously are just vehemently against government intervention in their lives for the most part, which is why obviously the Constitution is so important, yada, yada. Aussies, for whatever reason, are fine with it. They're just like, this is fine. My biggest point throughout all of this has been, you guys need to realize that when emergency legislation is passed to combat these specific instances and these things that happen, whether that be, terrorism, whether that be a flood levy, whatever is happening, this legislation gets passed in response to that and then never gets repealed. It's there forever. So what's to say and who's to stop a tyrannical leader from coming in? And I know that a lot of people are like, Sydney, this is never going to happen. Venezuela would disagree, my friends. But, who's to say that somewhere down the line, some psycho isn't going to get into a position of power and authority, go, there's all this emergency legislation here telling me that I can do this, 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 and this. Haha, suck it. And then enforce all of that. Sounds crazy, sure. who's to say that it's not going to happen?
Well, the legislation passed after 9/11 was an example of that. It was never repealed. It's still in place. This whole attitude in New Zealand, and I think New Zealand's almost like Australia's Canada. You know, they're just like, you look over there and go, thank fuck that's not us. But this legislation's passed that allows the police to just enter. Okay, so that's my attitude with the whole give an inch, take a mile thing. What's next? Okay, is it? Do they use that same sort of principle somewhere else? Does it become illegal to think something? The thought police, that whole George Orwellian attitude towards life. Like, where does this end? Does it end? Does it keep going? That's the concern. That's the fear. And I'm different to a lot of people in my sphere. Whereas when I'm not writing videos or trying to come up with ideas, I don't think about any of this shit. I'm able to switch off. But I know other people who I'm friends with who they do not stop thinking about this stuff and they go down rabbit holes. And one of my mates was talking about it the other day. He's talking about this conspiracy surrounding the sore throat disease. And he said, mate, I found this YouTube channel the other day and he's talking some real good stuff. His name's David Icke. I was like, do you mean David Icke? And he goes, yeah. I was like, okay, you might be saying some interesting things, but don't delve too deep or you'll realize that the Queen is a lizard. And only a couple of days later, David Icke actually had his YouTube channel removed for
oh, really?
Yeah, spreading spreading like conspiracies about the sore throat disease. So that was interesting as well. And that's the issue for people like us. Like, you know, you have a career, you have degrees, but you also have a YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers. I don't have anything aside from my YouTube and my stand-up. So YouTube decides tomorrow to, which they have done before, hit me with a community guideline strike or whatever. I got a guideline strike just 2 weeks ago for making a video about the wage gap.
Did you?
Yeah. I said that the video was called Female Athletes Don't Deserve the Same Pay. And it was basically going into account of the women's soccer team in America winning the World Cup, but only creating a certain amount of income for that particular organization and such a small amount in comparison to the men's. And that was why there was a disparity. And so I made that video. I went through the video. There's nothing in hate speechy about it, but I got banned for hate speech. And even in the video, I went to talk about Ronda Rousey in the UFC. She was the highest paid athlete because she was bringing the most eyes. And I said, so that completely argues against my point in the headline. So anyway, so I had that against me. And it is a concern because I look at the titles of your videos and they're like mine. That could be, you can say that's hate speech. You know, I've got your screen up right now. Any of these are hate speech. And that's a worrying thing that your livelihood on YouTube, your income from that can be taken away like that.
In a heartbeat. Oh yeah. No. I mean, like, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I certainly have noticed and look, I've been really lucky. I've only been at this for 2 years and I know your YouTube just went like, poof, like blew up, but
yeah, I'm pretty amazing.
Political YouTube is a little more difficult.
Yep.
You run into some more obstacles, but I feel really lucky, you know, because like I'm nearing, 400,000 subscribers and I'm so excited about that. Even though, I try not to focus on the numbers, I just try to like make good content because I love my community and I just think they're like the best people in the universe. But, I've noticed like a massive like slowing in terms of everything. I'm not getting the same amount of views that I usually would. And again, sometimes people just don't care about what I'm talking about, and that is okay. I always say, this is not a cult. You don't have to do or like what I say, you don't, whatever, like you choose what you click on. But what worries me is watching it slow down. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And the fact of the matter is, and when YouTube keeps exposing itself, the CEO keeps making these comments, or even the other day she said in an interview something to the effect of like, she is going to keep pushing more like MSM, like the mainstream media and stuff to the detriment of the individual creator, even though they're the people who made the platform what it is. And she knows that people don't like it. And she knows that the audience does not like it, and yet she keeps doing it because they just don't care about you and me as creators on the platform. But the thing that kills me is that they could easily just wipe us from the internet, and that's it. That's
there's
it.
no recourse. It's just that's the way it is. Sorry, bye.
And all your hard work is just like eviscerated in a heartbeat. And it scares me because I put so much time, effort, and energy into researching and writing and, you know, filming and editing my videos, because I don't have a team. You know, some people have editors, which I think is awesome if they can afford to do that. You know, it's just me making and creating all my content and doing everything. I'm like a one-man band with a million arms. And I love it. You know, I love what I do, but they could easily just wipe me from the internet. And it distresses me to no end when I think about that.
Yeah, and I just recently hired an editor like a week ago, and he in an attempt to make my videos a bit better. And I think it's a good move because I'm a shit editor. I just fucking chop and all that shit. And I also hired a thumbnail guy because I just can't make good thumbnails. I suck at Photoshop. I hate it. I'm so bad. I'm looking at your thumbnails now. They're good. I like them. Mine are awful. So, you know, you got
that little outline around yourself. It's always like red or yellow.
Yeah, it's usually yellow because that's the first one that comes up and I go, that'll do. Because the thumbnail is always the last thing I do. I'm just like, oh, fine, that looks fine. I'll do that. But, you know, so I've hired those guys. I lose my channel, which should be horrible for me. It's 2.5 years of, you know, I put up 3 videos every single week and have done for 2.5 years. And that's a massive loss for me, but it also loses that gentleman's income, the other gentleman's income, the people who are around me, people who send my merch. You know, it's a big kick in the teeth. And it's not just, as you said, it's eviscerated. You no longer exist on there. Every video gone. But it is very scary. But there is no other option. There's all these other people coming out going, oh, we're going to start this, we're going to start that. Not at the moment. Nothing ever happens. So I don't know. It is scary, but it's sort of this tightrope we're just sort of walking.
I know. Like, I was thinking about the fact that, like, when you work for a major outlet, and you could never do this because you're honestly too controversial, believe it or not, which is so funny to me because you're not even that controversial.
What are you talking about?
I'm just saying, you know, when you're not like abusing little Jewish ladies, was someone Jewish that you abused?
Yeah, someone's Jewish. Who cares? I don't want a job in the mainstream. So people keep saying to me, you should get a job somewhere on the TV. I don't want to do that. No, I like this. I like working from wherever I want to work from.
But there's security in that. I mean, and I don't want to work for, you know, like a mainstream outlet either. I mean, like, they're all trash. And like, I just want legacy media to die, and hopefully it will. Yep. But, you know, and obviously we're coming at this from different perspectives because I'm coming at it from the journalist world and you're coming at it from the comedy world. But, you know, when you do work for a major outlet, you still have that protection. You still have layers of protection there where they can't just, I mean, obviously they can fire you, but, you know, there has to be a reason. There sort of has to be a reason. But it's different, you know, someone can't just come along and just wipe off of the internet all the work you've ever done when you work for, you know, the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever, or you work for Comedy Central. They can't just come along and just go, you don't exist anymore. But YouTube can do that. And the thing is that puts so much pressure on you to eventually go with what they're asking you to do. And to, I mean, the fact that we can't even say the Rona thing is nuts.
What are you doing? Stop saying that. You can't say that. I cannot stress that enough. If you say that sore throat disease, I'll have a hate speech guideline for being a bigot.
Think about how insane that is. The fact that we can't say particular terms in videos, and I get this all the time because I constantly we talk about similar stuff, but like, you know, I was having a laugh with someone. I think I even said this on a podcast recently. I think of the last like 20 videos of mine, 17 of them have been demonetized. Yeah. So like, okay, but think about that, right? You have these people that are still pulling in views, that are still getting interaction and whatnot. They're still making you YouTube money. And yet for some reason, there are all these arbitrary guidelines that we're forced to abide by with absolutely no rhyme or reason. So people will argue that it's a private company. And then I'm like, well, that's fine if you want to argue that, but they also have the monopoly. They've monopolized the space. I don't know what the answer is. Now I'm just complaining, but
yeah. You know, it's not a monopoly. There's Vimeo. They're doing real good.
Oh yeah.
Vimeo's killing it. That's where I get my content from. Yeah. It's a concerning thing. And like, I go through
and I'll just do this now on my own computer screen. I'm not going to show people, but as far as the demonetization, you know, it's very here and there. Like a video I released recently, a man loses a bet and gets fake boobs. It's a very political video, but that's demonetized immediately. Michaela Peterson's podcast from the other week, that was monetized. Hooray!
Yeah.
Australian kids learned about Invasion Day. Demonetized. Fat Acceptance Movement, demonetized. My podcast with Bearing the other week, for some reason, demonetized. And yet, questioning hate, the video titled Questioning Feminism is Hate Speech, monetized. How is that fucking monetized?
I have no idea. I don't know.
It has to be down to the individual person reviewing it. And that's just shit, because then you take into account people's different ideologies and political leaning and all that type of stuff. But anyway, I know it's a conversation that's been had a million times and people are probably sick of it. But fuck you. This is what we're talking about, and it annoys me greatly.
It annoys me. Don't you worry. But I mean, like, yeah, people can find, like, I completely understand if people find this conversation annoying, but it's also annoying for creators, because the creators are over here like, I'm just trying to make you good content, you know, so that you watch it for free. And I'm over here worrying about having, you know, not me specifically, but, you know, the content creators worried about having their entire livelihood wiped off the internet. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I listen to other people complain about this and I sit there and I'm like, I agree. I'm like, personally, just gonna get tired of hearing about it, because I'm like, you know, I don't swear. I make a point of not swearing.
Oh, you don't swear?
You know, fall off a cliff. YouTube.
I heard you swear before we started the podcast.
No, I don't ever swear when I'm filming though. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Maybe you should start just swinging for the fences. Just
I've
like
sworn twice.
Start your next video like, "G'day, fuckheads, how are ya? Big city, Watson coming at you live from DC."
I bleep myself. You know what? When I put other people's clips in my videos and they're swearing, I bleep them. I bleep the F word out.
Fair enough.
I'm one of them.
Fair
you know
enough.
what it is I feel like, you know, I don't want to run the risk of also YouTube then turning around and being like, they're swearing in this. But also too, I mean, like, you know, I swear I will freely admit, I swear like a trooper outside of the internet. I'm Australian. I am Australian. I know I don't sound it, but I am. But yeah, when I get on, you know, when I get in front of the camera, I'm like, all right, Sid, let's tone it down and be a decent, nice person. Because you know, Isaac, not a decent, nice person with all that potty mouth.
A vulgarity. I hear a lot of people talk. I when I started doing YouTube and I started like editing my videos, and I was like, I started hearing how much I was saying the F-bomb, and then I thought to myself one day, like, you know, maybe this is a little bit too much. And then I went down that afternoon to footy trainer when I was playing footy back in the Dizzy, and that's just how people talk. That's how people talk in this country. If you're at the pub, that's how people talk to each other.
Yeah. No,
and Americans don't get that.
No, they don't. And it's so funny because Yanks, like, again, I love this country. I love living here in the US, but Americans sometimes just get so wildly offended by things. I'm like, I didn't know that I'm sorry. I don't know. It's just like our vernacular is just so affronting to so many people.
I'm interested.
You know,
sorry, go. I'm interested in finding out of you what it's like being a young female who's seen as a far righter.
Am I considered far right? That's fine.
Well, I'm far right apparently, so you have to be. We're talking to each other. You're far right because you're on this podcast. You're now far right.
You know, it doesn't really impact me too much. I got to be honest. The only time it did impact me is when I was at university and I had all these little lefty friends, and I had some really good mates at school, you know. And then obviously I decided to slowly give my opinion, and then became this. And the only thing that really irritates me about it is when people from my past who I used to be friends with say stuff where they're like, oh, I know her, you know, particularly online, they'll be like, oh, I know her personally, and, you know, she's a giant racist. And I'm like, and it's people that I had, you know, like 5 seconds of conversation with back in 2012. And I'm like, but other than that, you know what? I feel like I have the coolest community. I have, you know, my friends these days are predominantly fairly right-wing, fairly libertarian, whatever. Like, actually, you know, some leftist friends, believe it or not. And they're all really cool. My life is honestly pretty sweet, being, you know, just exactly who I am. No complaints.
being extremely far right.
So far out.
Well, thank you for what? What?
What is that? What does that even mean?
I
Far
don't
right.
know. It's usually what you call someone when you disagree with what they're saying.
I thought that was a Nazi.
We're all a bit of both. A little column A, column B. Who cares? It's all good. Sydney, thank you very much for your time on the podcast today. We'll get you back on for another one at some point. After about an hour or so, I start to fall asleep. Doesn't matter who I've got on. I just start going, I can't listen to my voice anymore. It does my head in.
No, I feel that.
I talk too much. I talk way too much. There's too much of me on the internet.
No, I feel you. Thank you for having me, sir. I look forward to us doing more things. Have me back. It'll be fun. We can talk more crap
Talk
about
more shit.
feminism.
I like it. We haven't covered enough feminism today, so we'll have to do that again. Now, is there anything, Sydney, you'd like to plug? How can people find you? Where should they go? Your links will be in the description below, but what else?
Oh, well, I mean, the best place to find me is probably on the YouTube, protect me, don't let me get wiped off the internet, and that's just Sydney Watson. All of my tags, all of my handles are different on every platform because for some reason,
That's
Sydney
smart.
Watson
Yep.
is a common name.
Oh, really?
If you want to complain at people on Twitter, then I am Sydney L. Watson, and if you want to send me some love on Instagram where I post a lot of memes, I'm getting better at making them. I do try really hard. It's Sydney Watson __ because I am a 13-year-old girl.
Jesus Christ. Well, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's hotboy69. And anyway, Sydney Watson, thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great podcast. Sydney Watson, bloody some of the best work. We'll be back next week, probably, hopefully, unless we get deleted. And be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Big stinks. I'll see you all very soon. Toodaloo, wah, wah, bah.